Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of T-Dog RC, and this is going to be another episode in the 25-inch Gnat Tony Nijhuis build. And as you can see, it's coming on quite nicely now, starting to look like a Gnat, which is great. And in this episode we're going to be doing a few different bits and bobs. So I need to fit this turtle deck here, so I'm going to be showing you how I fit that, getting the rudder in place, or tail fin should I say, and the horizontal stabs, doing a little bit of covering. First time I've done any of that for a very long time. I've got to mount some servos underneath here for the ailerons, so I've got to get that done, and I've also got to sort out the canopy and get that cut out and put on. So a few little bits and bobs, and then I think once I've done those bits, we'll be into the final build episode, which is where I'm going to cover the rest of it basically and just add all the little finishing touches. So if you've not subscribed already, then please hit the subscribe button. Also give me a thumbs up if you like the video, and if you have already subscribed, then I really appreciate your support. And if you're into all things Balsa, EDFs, a little bit of FPV wings, then you are going to want to subscribe to my channel. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. Alright then, so here we go for the next episode. And what I'm going to start with, you can see I've done a little bit of filler here, by the way, on the wings. So these are all glued into position now. I've already put some filler on, sanded that down. I've just got a few extra little bits where there's a couple of little marks and things. So just waiting for that filler to go off and I'll give it a final sand. I've gone over the whole thing with some, what is it, just some 400 grit, so not too fine, but enough to sort of give it a little, you know, like a really nice soft feel, and I think that should be fine, ready for covering. But what I'm going to do now is, we've got these two pieces, which are piece number 22, and then I've got piece number 21, which goes here. So the fin goes in here, like that. Then you've got this piece that goes on here. And then either side of the fin, you've got these fillets, basically, which support the fin. And also, the idea with these is that you sand these down, so it's basically like a semicircle. So it's nice and round, and then I've got this, which is former 20, which I've already got marked up. That's going to glue here like that. So I've just got to glue that at 90 degrees. I've already marked out the centre of that and the centre of the fuselage, and this is going to form the turtle deck. But what it says to do is, it says to glue the fin in place and then chamfer these a bit before you glue them in, and then to get these glued in place and then kind of finish it off. But what I've decided to do, because the fin is a really nice tight fit in here, I'm going to do it slightly differently. So I'm going to get the fin in place, just pushed in place. As I said, it is really good fit. So we'll get that put in place. Then I'm going to tape these together, just with a bit of masking tape, just to secure this together. Then I'm going to chamfer these down, because I think it'd be nice and easy to do it like that. Then, with the fin in place, I'm then going to glue these in place so they're in the right position, along with this piece here, which is number 21, which is just basically fill a bit there. And then I'm going to pull the fin out once I've got these glued in place. I'll probably just sort of spot glue these in place so it doesn't, there's no risk of the CA soaking through to this. I'm going to pull this out then, and then I'm, in this episode, going to do my first bit of covering for 20 odd years, and I'm going to cover the fin, both sides, cover it up to that line there. I've marked that line, which is the inside edge of these fillets, because that's the inside edge is not going to change from how it is now, it's just the outside edge that's going to get sanded. So I've marked those on there, so I'm going to cover down to there, then I'm going to stick it back in. Oh, sorry, no, what I probably will do then is get the rest of the fuselage covered, and put the fin in right at the end. I just think it's going to make it so much easier to do the covering without having the fin stuck there and trying to cover around it. So that's my plan. So I'm just going to get these. Basically what I'm going to do is just going to get a bit of masking tape. And then make sure these are nicely lined up and flat. I'm just going to get some tape like this. Just wrap that around a bit. And then I'm going to do the same on the back. Probably have to trim that side down a bit. But just put a little bit in the middle as well. And hopefully that will hold it in place enough for me to get the razor plane on it and start shaping it. Let me just trim that down a bit. Hopefully that's going to be enough just to hold it at least. And then we'll get the razor plane. I've ended up putting a new blade in this because I fitted a door at the weekend, an oak door no less, and I couldn't find my plane anywhere. I used to have a plane, I just needed to just trim a tiny bit off it. So I thought, oh well, this is the only thing I've got, and I used it. It actually worked really well, believe it or not, but obviously completely knackered the blade up that was in it. But fortunately you get a load in the box anyway, so it wasn't so bad. So we have literally just got to chamfer this down. Just easier said than done, because it's a fiddly little piece really. And obviously we want it to be the same on both sides. But essentially we're just taking the corners off. Same on that side, I'll do in a second. Just to get this to like a nice round shape. So I will crack on with that and I'll come back to you. Okay, so got these shaped up, so they're more or less a not round shape. I've got the fin put in temporarily, so as I said, I've just pushed this in, but it's a really tight fit. Look, I can lift the whole thing up, no problem. So what I'm going to do now is just get these lined up like this, to get them square with the back of the fin like that, and then we've got this little piece to go in here, which wants to go there like that, and then I'm going to CA this in place just with a couple of drops of CA, like I say, so not too much, because I don't want to glue the fin in place. So we get that wicked in there at the front. Just give that a second to go off. There's no danger of that going down to the fin, so we're okay there. And then at the back here, I'm just going to put a tiny blob on. Well, not a blob, but because it's thin, so you can't really call it a blob, can you? But just like a little drop, literally just to lock that in place there. And I'll do the same on this side. Okay, perfect. There we are then. So we've got the fin out. These are tacked in place, and now I can run some CA all down the edge of these now and really lock them in. So we'll get this side done. Okay, and we'll just do this side. And I'll just put a little bit on the bottom edge here as well. I think it has whipped through there by the looks of it. Oh yeah, and then we just need to put a bit in here as well, just to lock this filler piece in. So that should be good. That's good. That's nicely shaped as well, so that's alright. So now what I've got to do is we've just got to get former 20 put on here like this. So I'll use some of my trusty blocks and we'll get this lined up like that. Let me just check that that is definitely going to be straight. Yeah, that's pretty good. So let's get this locked in place as well. Okay, now we've got that on there, the next task is going to be a bit tricky, I think, because we've got to get this really thin piece of bolt, so I think that's 1/16 included in the wood pack, and we've got to wet it and then form it around here to make this turtle deck. So first job is going to be to trim it down to the length. And I'll probably do it slightly oversized because we're going to have to sand it down a little bit. So that's how long it needs to be. And I think what I might do is just sort of measure the circumference of that and that. So I just could do a little bit of string or something, or kind of measure it. Yeah. Okay, so randomly just found this bit of string knocking around in the workshop. Not sure what that's from, to be honest, but it'll do the job nicely. And I think this is right. In my head it feels right. So I think if I measure that like that, it doesn't have to be absolutely bang on because we can trim it down. And then I just measure that. That is 80 mils. And that is 35 mils. So I think if I measure 80 here, is that even going to be wide enough? 75. Okay, so maybe that is the correct width then there. And then I measure 35 here and then sort of trim that. I think that's going to be about right. Right, so I think that that is going to be about right. I've just drawn on there. So I've got 75 at this end, which obviously can't go any wider than that. And then down at this end, that's 35 divided by 2 for the centre there, which should be, I think, about right. But just had a thought while I was cutting that, and this is the thing when you sort of don't, you know, just stop and think about things. Rather than cut this, because this is the only piece I've got, I'm actually going to make a template out of some cardboard. So I'm going to dig out some cardboard, or I've got this, some of this acetate, which might do the job. I'm going to draw that out anyway, the same size, and then I can play around with that and trim it and everything until I'm happy that it's the right size, and then I can transfer that to the balsa wood. So I'm just going to try that now. I think I will use a bit of this acetate. Okay, so you probably can't see that very well on the camera obviously because it's a clear piece, but that I think is the right size that the balsa needs to be. So there's only one way to find out, but it doesn't matter if it's wrong because it's just a scrap piece. So let's get the piece and see what happens. The only problem is it's a bit flimsy obviously with it being acetate. Well, first thing first is that's quite a bit, that's way too wide. It's quite a bit too big really. That's not far off there now. I suspect this bit's going to be too big still. It's not bad. I think the large side is okay, but this bit is still a little bit too wide. So we'll just try trimming a tiny bit more off. Okay, that's not too bad. It's probably still a tad too big, but I'd rather have the balsa slightly bigger. So I can have a bit more of a play with it. So let's try it. Okay, well, we'll have to see. So what I need to do now actually is I need to wet this so I can make it really bendy because it'll probably snap. So I'm just going to go and soak that in a bit of water for a little bit and then have a play around with it and see if we can get it to get lined up. Okay guys, well, got that glued on. It's not 100% perfect. There's a bit of a gap at the bottom, so perhaps it wasn't quite wide enough, but it's fine because I can just fill that with some filler. Same at the back there, and you'll never know. But the shape of it, I think, looks good, and it's got a nice curve to it. So what I'll do is I'll sand that right down here at the back, so that's all blended in. And then at the front, I just need to trim this edge off here. But what I'm going to do now is leave it to dry overnight, because it is pretty damp. But the good thing with CA is CA actually still sticks stuff that's wet. So I've been able to stick it down with the CA. But yeah, we'll just leave that now, and I'll come back to that tomorrow. Right, okay, so back in the workshop. It's been a few weeks since I last did the last clip, and a lot has happened in those few weeks here in the UK. So it was the Queen's funeral yesterday. So I haven't been getting into the workshop much. Had other things on my mind. It was a pretty emotional day for many people in the UK yesterday, saying goodbye to the Queen. But we've got to move forward, move on, and crack on. And in fact, I went down to the flying field this afternoon. It's been a really nice September day here. Absolutely still as anything, no wind, just lovely day. So I went down to the flying field this afternoon, and it was just me and the birds and the planes, and had a good few sessions. Yeah, and it was good. It's just good to get away from everything over the last few days. And now I need to get stuck back into this, basically. So, as you can see, it's coming on quite nicely. I'm really starting to, you know, it's really starting to take shape, starting to look like a gnat. I've got the fin and tailplane just pushed into position there, because what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to cover these. So I've got some, let me just show you this. Got some Cub yellow solar film. Well, it's not called solar film anymore, is it? I'm not sure what this stuff is, but it's the usual stuff anyway. It used to be called solar film many years ago, but I'll be covering it with that anyway. So I'm going to get these two covered. I've put lines on here and the other side obviously as well, so I can get those covered. And then also I won't actually glue those in position either just yet. I'll do that in the next episode, I think, once I start covering everything, the whole fuselage and stuff like that, so that'll be on the finishing touches. But what I want to do basically for the rest of this episode is get these covered at least, get the canopy cut out and sort of marked up, because what I'm going to do is just paint this area matte black. I'm not going to do anything fancy, I'm afraid, with the cockpit or anything like that, so I'm just going to do it matte black. But I want to get that cut out first so I can sort of cover around it. And then the other thing I'm going to do just to finish this episode off is, oh, there's a little spider on the bottom of the wing. Just goes to show how long I've not been in here. I've got to mount some servos, so I'm going to cut the holes out there for the servos, and just get those ready basically with the ailerons on. It doesn't really matter where I put those, they've kind of just got to be around about here. I've got some push rods already, so I'll see how long those are, and maybe set the distance accordingly. Using those would probably be the sensible option. So that's where I'm at with it, and then I think that will wrap this episode up, and then the next episode after that will really just be the finishing touches, I guess. So it's covering the whole thing, getting these bits glued into place, getting these surfaces hinged and glued in. That's it really. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Hopefully going to be cracking on now over the next few days. Sorry about that, I've just got some batteries from this afternoon going into storage charge. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be cracking on with. So it's a long time since I've covered anything. So I think what I will do is cover one of these horizontal stabs off camera, just to check that I still know what I'm doing. I have got, by the way, these two items, and these are my original covering iron and heat gun from 1995, probably last time I used these. They do still work, so that's what I'm going to be using. Yeah, so I'm going to cover this horizontal stab off camera just to make sure I still know what I'm doing. It's a nice easy piece to cover, and then the rest of it I'll show you in a high speed film, because it's not very entertaining really just watching the covering going on. So I'll get that done, and then I'll come back to you and we'll start having a look at the canopy. Alright then, so it turns out after 25 years or so since I last did a bit of covering that I can still do it, which is great. I'm really quite pleased with that. It's gone on really nice. It's actually quite a neat job, if I do say so myself, for the very first attempt, like I say, after all this time. So started with the bottom, so then I could lap the top around. It just gives you sort of a neater look from the top, so you know where you're going to see it most of the time. So I got the two horizontal stabs done. So next job is to get this vertical stabilizer done. Let's take it out. So we're going to get this covered, and what I'm using is this stuff which I showed earlier. This is J. Perkins film, and as far as I can tell it seems really quite nice. I know there's all sorts of people get a bit precious, it seems, over a certain film and they like a certain one, which I can totally understand. You know, if you're comfortable with a particular brand and that works for you, then you know, then that's fine. I have watched a video the other day when someone was using so I think it was called Easy Coat. I've not come across that one myself, but they really didn't like it because it was a clear film and it was the adhesive that gave you the colour underneath the film. And they were having some real problems with the adhesive like bleeding out from under the film. But this stuff, I've got to say, does seem really nice to use. I've got no complaints with it at all. Back in the day I used to use solar film. I don't think you can get it anymore. I was having a look the other night online and I couldn't. You can get solar trim, but you can't seem to get solar film. And I remember it used to come in like a big long sort of rectangle. It wasn't sold in a roll, it was like a big long rectangular pack that you used to get, and I'm sure it used to be, I'm sure you used to get about 5 meters in the pack, and it was about £8 or something like that, and it was one of the best films on the market. Now this was not bad price. This was about £10 for 2 meters, but I think the one that people really like is monocoat, I think, Aura Cover, sorry, Aura Cover, I think it is the popular one over here, and that's like, for a 2 meter roll, that's like £40. You know, so I assume it's, you know, I don't know what's so good about it, but sure, it must be nice stuff. But the problem is, if you make a mistake, that's a lot of money that you've got to throw down the drain. So in terms of covering, you know, and I may be already talking to people that have got lots of experience, so excuse me if that's you, but for those people who are watching that haven't really done any covering before, and I'm sure there's plenty of those people, main tools really are a nice sharp knife, some scissors, some sharp scissors. These scissors aren't great, to be honest, but they do the job, but I think I will get some more. And then I've got my iron. I've got it on sort of a medium heat there, still going strong after all these years as well. I haven't used the heat gun because you don't really need it for sort of a solid surface like this. It's not really necessary. And essentially, you know, all you do is get the film laid out. It's a bit tricky because obviously it's rolled up, so it wants to just roll back on itself all the time. And we just need to cut a section out to cover one side. Now, because this is a vertical stabilizer, I can't really do underneath, obviously, and then the top. So kind of just got to choose one side to do first. Doesn't really matter, but then just make sure I make a nice, neat job of the overlaps. So that's going to be slightly trickier than the horizontal stabs, because you can do the underneath. It doesn't really matter too much how that looks, and and then just do a nice job on the top. So we'll solar film's actually getting in. This covering's actually getting a bit of a mess here because I've cut various bits out, but I think I'll just cut it across here, and then saving any pieces as well. I know. Well, that's actually a pile of rubbish, but even a piece like that, I know it looks like you just throw that away, but actually that could come in useful, something like that, just to patch an area up or something. So don't necessarily throw all the bits away unless it's just like a tiny piece like these, which is pointless keeping those. So I'm going to cut this piece out, and hopefully this is going to be enough to do both sides. It's so really tight roll. It wants to just constantly curl up on itself, which is a little bit frustrating. And then obviously for this piece, we kind of just need it cutting along the bottom and up here, and that piece should then be enough for us to do the other side. So I think what I'll do is I'll just trim this with my knife this time. Make sure that's definitely going to be okay. And we'll just go along here. Let's put that to one side. And what I like to do, obviously you could trim this down some more. I mean, I could quite easily trim it along here, because obviously the less material you've got, the easier it is to work with. Double check all the time that it is going to fit. It's nothing more frustrating than trimming it down and then you realise you've cut it so it doesn't fit anymore. It's a bit like wrapping a present. And then there's a backing on I think on most trims, certainly on this one and the ones I used to remember. So you need to obviously make sure you remove this. So there's just a backing. And then what I like to do, certainly on a piece like this where it's a solid piece, is get it lined up like that, and rather than trimming it even more, I like to just get it tacked on. So I'm just going to tack it up there like that. And then work along it now, because obviously if I tack it at the back edge I'm going to have a load of wrinkles in the middle. So we'll just get that smoothed out. Obviously this is quite a small piece, so you can do this. If it was a bigger area you might not be able to do it quite like this. Now what's happening with this is it's warping it a bit, which is why I've got that wrinkle in the middle there. But what I'll do is I'll put it flat and then put the other side on, and hopefully that'll straighten it out. But I prefer to do that now. So that's tacked on more or less, and then now trim it out. I just find it a lot easier to work with because it's not constantly curling up all the time. So let's use the scissors to sort of cut these initial bits off. Obviously try and keep it nice and straight and at least uniform, because what you don't want is obviously a wavy line where you wrap the covering round, if that makes sense. So you want it to be kind of the same size as much as you can. Sure, there's lots of people watching this now going, what the hell are you doing? But this works for me anyway. So we'll trim this back edge. And then I'm not too worried about this really. I might just cut it off just to make it easier, but that's all going to come off because I don't want any on the so I've got to cut it along there anyway, because that's the bit that goes inside the fuselage. So obviously then you've got the tricky bits like the curves. Basically all you can really do with these is just put a cut. Can you see that? Yep, just about. So just where it starts to go round, just sort of put a couple of cuts like this, so you can lip the film over and it's not going to crease up. And then I usually like to put at least one sort of in the middle here, sometimes more, just so you're not doing this whole front section as one piece. Because again, the more that you try and do it once, sometimes it can crease up. So what we'll do now, we'll try and work that over the leading edge. It is quite a satisfying process, I've got to say. It's quite relaxing in a way. So yeah, that's gone around there quite nicely, as you can see there. What I'll do is I'll make, when I come to do this side, I'll do the cut a lot tighter, so this lip will be underneath the top side, this left hand side. So this is where it's going to get tricky to go around this bit here, but you've kind of just got to fold it around and see what you can do. There's no other way of doing it really. And it's definitely one of those things, the more you do it, obviously the better you get at it. It's just having that experience to know, which I haven't got by the way, but when you get to a particular area, is how do you tackle it. And obviously if you've not done it for a long time, or you've never done it before, you've got no idea. You just have to sort of try it and see. But people who do this quite a lot on their models will know, oh yeah, when I get to the leading edge of a wing I need to do this to make it look neat. So it just comes with experience. Also, apologies if I'm not keeping this on the camera. It's always tricky trying to do stuff and get it on the camera and talk. But you know, do our best. So put a cut here, and then I'm going to put a cut there because that's where it's going to meet up with the fuselage. So we can trim that little bit off there at the very back. And then where I've got this angle here, I think you can see that. I'll just put a little cut there just to ease that around. So then we'll start with this piece. So we start by tacking it onto the trailing edge and then lapping it around and then letting that seal down. And it does shrink quite nicely. So if you have got, you know, it looks like you've got some wrinkles in there, they do go away. And then we'll just do this last little bit here. And then we've got this bit here to do. And then just this little piece here. Okay, so trim that off, just seal that edge on. And then just get any last little wrinkles out. You do sort of look at it and think, blimey, they're never going to come out, but they do if you just hold the iron on, as long as the film's sort of decent film. They do come out. So we've just got that one sort of crease. I know for a fact that's going to come out, particularly if I got the, I don't know how well you can see that on the, oh yeah, you can quite easily actually. I don't know how well you can see that on the, I know that will come out particularly if I got my heat gun on it, but I think, like I say, what's happening is it's pulling the fin because I've only got it on one side. So I'll get the other side on, then I'll go over that with the iron, and I'm pretty confident that will disappear. But that's one side done. As you can see, it is quite nice around the edges, and then obviously I've cut that piece there, so it does go on quite nice. You know, the thing to do is, if you've never done it before, is just get a piece and a piece of wood and just practice with it, basically. So what I'm going to do now is I've got to get this side on now, and I want to make this side the sort of really good side. So I want to get my edges nice and tight and cut quite thin, so it just leaves a nice seam. So I shall get that done. Probably speed up the film so you're not just watching me do it, and I'll show you the finished result. Okay, that's that done, and yeah, it's come out quite nice. And as you can see now, the crease that I had down the middle there is completely gone, and that has indeed pulled it nice and straight, and it has made it, you know, nice. Quite a fair bit of strength it's added to that, because that was quite a flimsy piece, with it only just being like a thin 1/8 piece of balsa. So yeah, that's gone on quite well. Seams are quite nice. As I say, you can't, with something like a vertical stab, it's difficult to get it perfect, because you're always going to have one side that's going to overlap. That's just the way it is, you know, and that can't be the underneath. One thing I would say as well is, when you're doing it, you kind of do it naturally anyway, but I don't always move the iron around the whatever it is that I'm covering, but quite often keep the iron where it is and move the thing I'm actually covering, and I find that sometimes works better. But you know, it's just whatever works for you. But you kind of, as I say, it's just one of those things. It's until you've had a go at it, you know, you'll understand when you have a crack at it. But it does give a nice finish, because it does shrink down really well. It's obviously not paint, so it's not going to you know, come off like you know, if you catch it or something like that. It's quite hard wearing, and yeah, it does give a, you know, a really quite nice finish, and adds a bit of strength as well, like I say. And the other nice thing, well, the other good thing is that with this being an electric model, when I used to do it years ago, everything was nitro, and you always had to think about where your seams were in relation to the exhaust and the oil and all that, because if you got the oil, you know, eventually if you got oil underneath the seams, it would in some cases start peeling back and start to look a bit messy. But obviously you don't have to worry about that now with electric. So yeah, let's get it in the Gnat, see how it looks. Okay, well, that's how it looks in place, so pretty nice, I think you'll agree, hopefully. The only thing I'm going to need to do, I think, It's very minor though, but maybe just put a little bit of filler there, but I'm not sure, to be honest. It's probably like a millimetre difference, so maybe just with a bit of covering that you won't really notice. Next thing I need to get on with now, I've done those two. I have realised I just need to cover these quickly, which are the elevators. So we'll get those done now. I'm going to get the bottom hatch covered, I think, while I've got the iron out and everything. And then I'll move on to the canopy. So I'll show you what I'm doing with the canopy, and I just need to sand these bits of triangle out here. So there and there. So I'll get the triangle done and get these little bits covered, and then I'll come back when I'm ready to do the canopy, and we'll have a look at that. Right then, so we've got these bits covered, as you've seen. That was the other day. I've just sanded these intakes, so the triangle section off the intakes, and to do that I just got a piece of dowel and then used some contact adhesive just to glue a little bit of sandpaper on there. That's worked quite nicely. I'll keep that because that's quite a handy tool to put in the old toolbox there. So that's got that triangle section down and looking nice and even there on the intakes. That's good. So my next job now is to just cut these holes out for the servos, which is not a big one, not a big job. So I've shown you these servos before. I think they're just little Emax 6-gram digital metal geared servos. So quite nice little things really. They really are pretty small, as you can see, but should be fine with them being metal geared. And what I've done is I've just drawn a line here, so that just the other side of that line is a former. So obviously I don't want to get the servo stuck. I don't want to cut a hole where that former is, because that's going to damage the former and also make it difficult to cut out. So basically just need to sort of get the servo permissioned. Blimey, can't talk today. I'm not feeling too great, as you might be able to tell by my voice. Got a bit of a cold. But I need to get the servo positioned there, and then just draw around that and cut a hole, and obviously do the same for the other side. And then I've got some little push rods, which I've actually got off my Wing Z84 that I've crashed a couple of times now. I'm kind of given up with, so I've just took those off there. Very sort of simple setup, Z bend, and then one of these clevises on the front with a thread. But they're going to be too long, so I'm going to have to cut this down. I have got a Z bender, so I'll just have to put a new Z bend in. That's not a problem. So I'll get those cut out now. So it should be a fairly quick job. And then my next job after that is going to be getting this canopy cut out. So basically what I've got to do to get the canopy cut out, well, it's fairly straightforward if you've not done something like this before, but it's just got the moulded lines on it. So I've just got to take some scissors essentially and trim this out along that line. And then I've bought a bit of a blast from the past. Haven't bought these for a very long time, since I was a lot younger and used to sort of build Airfix models and stuff. Just a little bit of this model paint, so that's kind of a gloss black, which is what I'm going to use to just fill these lines in basically, just to make the canopy stand out a little bit. And then for the actual sort of cockpit area on the model, so here I've just put some of this NATO matte olive green, so that's what I'm just going to do on the inside here. But obviously I need to just mark that out a little bit once I've got the canopy cut out, so I can see where I need to paint. So got a few bits to do, so I'll crack on with those bits, and then I'll show you where I'm at once I've got the servo and the canopy cut out. Right then, we are done for this episode. So I've got this cockpit area painted with sort of the matte olive green. Now I know it looks a bit of a mess at the minute, but if you can imagine, I will be covering around this So I'll only leave the bit that's actually in the cockpit. So once it's covered, it won't look such a mess as this, because you'll only see that area. Got the cockpit painted and cut out. So just painted that with a little bit of black paint on the inside. That's going to sit on there like that. So I've got a drawer around this, and then like I say, that's where I'm going to cover to, and then I'll just cut the covering out with my knife, and hopefully that should leave a nice finish. Other little bits I did was I've mounted the servos in there. So there's one on that side, there's one the same on the other side. That one's a little bit of a looser fit, to be honest, just there. So that's for the ailerons, so that's all good. I've also covered the ailerons as well, so I did that last night. So we've got all those bits done, and really that brings this episode to a close, I think. But as you can see with the canopy on, it's looking really cool, I think. It certainly will when it's all covered and finished. Really like the shape of it. It's a nice looking plane, the Gnat. It's just one of those planes that just looks right, if you know what I mean. So next episode is really mainly going to be about getting it all covered and getting those last little bits finished off. So getting the surfaces hooked up, control horns fitted, and that is really going to be it. So the next episode is going to be the last one of the build series, and then obviously I'll do a video of the maiden, etc. But hopefully you've enjoyed following along with this. If you have, then please give me a thumbs up. That really helps me out. And the main thing I'd love you to do is subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. And if you're into Balsa, Nitro, EDFs, and I do a little bit with FPV wings and stuff like that as well, then you want to subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, so just hit that subscribe button. And thank you so much to all the people that have subscribed already. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you soon for the next one.